Hey there, YouTube. It's Friday night, which means it's time for Smackdown on Fox. It's also the go-home show for the biggest party of the summer, SummerSlam. More importantly, it's the first ever Thunderdome. This is WWE's attempt to provide a socially distanced, interactive fan experience. We'll get to that more in a second. As always, before we begin, I'm trying to get this channel up and running from scratch. So, if you've managed to find me, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with any wrestling or action figure nerds you may know, and subscribe to the channel to help me grow. You can also talk to me over on Twitter at PSUOptimus, or check out my fledgling Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. Now, for a review, let's take it over to the action figures. We open in the all-new Thunderdome with Mr. McMahon. They played the song and set off pyro, but without the crowd cheering, it was kind of awkward. As Vince goes to speak, the lights turn off, come back on red, and the Fiend creepily makes his way to the ring. I have to say, other than the bigger entrance stage, so far the Thunderdome doesn't really seem to add much. The Fiend won't let Vince leave the ring. However, before he can do anything to the CEO, Braun Strowman's music hits, and he comes out to confront his SummerSlam opponent. During their stare-down, the lights start to flicker, and suddenly, members of Retribution climb onto the ring apron. Corey yells, "How'd they get into Thunderdome?" There's at least 12 members this time, as commentary says they're growing in number. Both men smile at each other, and I thought they were about to have fun destroying Retribution together. Instead, the Fiend waves at Braun. The lights go black, and when they come back on, Strowman is alone, surrounded by the masked group. They attack all at once and overwhelm the monster among men. Big E leads the locker room out for the save. The Miz comes out late as the ring is already cleared out. Kinda like he did the other week when Morrison was attacked. Interesting. While being helped up, Strowman levels Drew Gulak, then attacks Jey Uso before angrily storming to the back. In our first match of the evening, Big E takes on Sheamus. These two are seemingly fighting over who deserves to be the locker room leader. The match gives us our first real look at the Thunderdome in action, but it's kind of diminished by all the superstars surrounding the ring to protect it against Retribution. Now that I'm hearing it, I definitely appreciate the white noise provided by the crowd during matches though. I've said from the beginning of the lockdown era that both WWE and AEW needed to either play music so it feels like a video game, or pumping crowd noise like they did at Backlash. The lights start to flicker again, but nothing happens. All of this is taking away from an otherwise entertaining TV match full of both men's signature moves. Sheamus gets the upper hand, but just as he's about to deliver a brogue kick, he's distracted by a fight on the outside between King Corbin and Matt Riddle. Big E takes advantage and rolls up the Celtic Warrior for the win. He celebrates by dancing with heavy machinery in the ring, much to Corey's chagrin. Lucha House Party are making their way to the ring for their tag team title opportunity when the tag champs attack them, getting in some cheap shots and laying them out before the match. Jeff Hardy is getting his knee checked out in the trainer's room. He claims someone, likely from Retribution, attacked him during the melee, but he emphasizes to the doctor that he needs to be ready for his match later. The Raw Tag Team titles will be on the line this Sunday at SummerSlam. I guess there wasn't enough room on the card for the Smackdown tag titles, so we're getting our first championship match of the night right now. I'm just glad Lucha House Party are finally getting more exposure and opportunities. During the entrances, I noticed that they turned off the audience screens. In my opinion, this really took away from one of my favorite parts of pro wrestling, the entrances. How are you supposed to have a crowd pop if there's no crowd? We did get pops for big moves later on. I just want them for the entrances as well. During the match, a window pops up with The Miz and Morrison telling corny jokes and making puns about other wrestlers. It was incredibly distracting, especially when Michael Cole was trying to call near falls in the ring. The match is short but decent, which you would expect from these wrestlers. At one point, Gran Metalik goes to do a diving Hurricane Rana to Cesaro on the outside, but misses and basically powerbombs himself onto the concrete. I hope he's okay. The ending seems somewhat botched as well, as Lince Dorado tried to counter a slam by flipping over but got rolled up instead, and loses the titles for his team. Afterwards, the newly returned Kalisto is complaining in Spanish. Lince seems to have had enough and shoves Kalisto, who gets a crazy look in his eye. They go at each other with Gran Metalik in the middle, trying to separate them until officials can come out. I hope they're not thinking about breaking up Lucha House Party. I really like them. Jeff Hardy is still getting looked at as we see footage of the brawl with Retribution from earlier. During the chaos, apparently AJ Styles ran up and kicked Jeff in the back of the knee, causing the injury, then he ran away. AJ is stopped backstage. Kayla Braxton says the footage we just saw clearly shows that AJ is responsible for Jeff's injury. AJ says all the footage shows is his urgency in trying to get rid of Retribution. Maybe Jeff should have shown some urgency too and not been in his way. AJ says that Jeff's career has been shameful, and everywhere Jeff has been, he's wasted it. Last week, Hardy claimed he could stand on his own 2 feet. Tonight, proved he can't. Mandy Rose is getting interviewed backstage. She says it's been a rough week and she doesn't know what's going through Sonya's head. Mandy looks into the camera and says the Sonya Deville she knows and was best friends with is still in there. So instead of this hair versus hair match, let's just put the past behind us. What? Is she not going through with this match now? I'm confused. Sasha and Bayley come to the ring for an interview with Corey Graves. He's surprisingly antagonistic as he asks if they're breaking up. They laugh it off. Corey says on Raw it was weird that Bayley wanted to face Asuka first at SummerSlam. Bayley says it was just a suggestion and that Sasha could go first if she wanted to. Sasha takes that as Bayley volunteering her again and gets pissed. As the tension builds, Bayley diffuses by saying there's nothing to worry about. No one in the locker room can beat the 2 of them in one night. Right on cue, Naomi comes sliding down the ramp to interrupt and challenges the champions. Corey suggests a beat the clock challenge to determine SummerSlam positioning. It looks like Sasha will be going first tonight. There's a lot of interference from Bayley on the outside, and eventually, Naomi taps out to the bank statement in 3 minutes 39 seconds. While Sasha's music is still playing, Bayley jumps Naomi and demands they immediately start her match. She tries a series of quick pin attempts trying to beat Sasha's time, but Naomi hits her with a rear view and picks up the win. Sasha rejoices that she'll get to go second at SummerSlam, then rushes to Bayley's side, feigning concern. We're treated to brilliant acting as Bayley is stunned while Sasha slyly smiles. I finally paid attention to the audience during these matches. Most looked bored out of their mind and none appeared to be making noise. That begs the question, is the crowd noise that we're hearing being pumped in? If so, what's the point of this virtual crowd? Is it just visual aesthetics? Asuka comes out to the stage and yells in Japanese. She finishes by saying that at SummerSlam, she will become the Empress of every title. She kicks an attacking Sasha Banks and goes after a beaten Bayley in the ring, but Bayley grabs her titles and hightails it out of there right past a laid-out Sasha on the ramp, while Asuka dances in the ring. The backstage doctor says that Jeff Hardy looks stable enough, and as long as he can tolerate the pain, he's medically cleared for competition. Jeff makes a played-out reference to the one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Backstage, Sonya Deville refuses to talk to Kayla Braxton. Dana Brooke comes over and says she's sorry for what Sonya has had to go through this week, referring to the intruder and would-be kidnapper that broke into her home. Sonya says it's nothing she can't handle, then smacks the ever-living crap out of Dana, calling her disrespectful and walking off. After a commercial, Sonya Deville comes out to the stage and delivers a straight fire promo. She heard what Mandy had to say. She gets that Mandy is second-guessing her own challenge. In fact, that's exactly what she said Mandy would do. But they're going to end up facing each other one way or another, so it's time to raise the stakes a little. Their match at SummerSlam will now be a no disqualification match where the loser has to leave WWE. We see Nikki Cross talking to a camera. When she spoke to Alexa on Tuesday, something seemed off. This isn't the Alexa Bliss that Nikki knows. She's different, and Nikki is scared that something terrible is about to happen. Just like with the tag team title match earlier, the SummerSlam card wasn't big enough again, so we're getting an Intercontinental Championship match free on television. Okay, now I'm positive that the crowd noise is being pumped in, and I'm not sure I like it. Jeff Hardy comes limping to the ring wearing a knee brace and selling his injury. That gives AJ the early advantage as commentary questions if the ref should stop the match. Suddenly, Hardy finds a second wind and battles back, hitting a few signature moves. His knee gives out climbing the ropes though, and the match is back in AJ's favor. As he sets up for the Styles Clash, Jeff flails his leg and clocks AJ in the head with a knee brace. Hardy follows it up with a twist of fate and a swanton bomb to become your new Intercontinental Champion. The virtual crowd goes wild, and we see the first close-ups of individual audience members. They do not seem as enthused as the cheers would have you believe. Jeff Hardy gives an impassioned speech post-match, but strangely gets cut off by his own music, as if his acceptance speech had gone long at an awards show. AJ is backstage furious at Abyss because the analytics proved that he would beat Jeff Hardy. He claims that Jeff cheated by using the knee brace. Then, he berates Abyss for costing so much money. In tonight's episode of the Firefly Funhouse, Bray Wyatt is apparently impressed by the Thunderdome. He tells his Fireflies that he loves us, but love can be a terrible thing. It can trick you into an emotional, physical, and financial burden. Too much love can turn a field of sunflowers into a wasteland, whatever that means. Bray consults the Hurt Glove, and tells us to take Braun and Alexa, for example. They're a Shakespearean tragedy. We go to the Firefly Theater, where Huskus the Pig Boy plays Braun Strowman, and Ramblin' Rabbit plays Alexa Bliss, in a dramatic skit about the couple's forbidden love. Just as they're about to kiss, Bray stops them and says that's not at all how things happened. Bray says we need to be more like the Fiend, a being fueled by hate and anger, who can't wait to get his hands on Braun Strowman at SummerSlam. Bray sniffs the air and says, "What took you so long?" as Braun tackles him, pummels him, and drags him away, screaming, "I'm not finished with you." After a commercial break, we cut to Braun Strowman throwing Bray Wyatt around the backstage area until he finally chokeslams Bray off a loading dock, with terrible editing and one of the worst sound effects I've ever heard. Officials and an ambulance rush to Wyatt's aid. It takes forever to get him loaded into the ambulance, but when it finally drives off, it suddenly stops at the end of the ramp and slowly backs up. The light inside turns red, as the cameras catch the shocked reactions of officials looking on. When they turn back, the Fiend is posing with the ambulance doors wide open. He laughs into the camera and says, "Let me in," as we fade to black. Once again, WWE packed a hell of a lot into 2 hours, so I wasn't really able to fantasy book anything. But this was the go-home show for one of the big 4 pay-per-views, so that's to be expected. The Thunderdome is interesting, but it's going to have to grow on me a little. Clearly, they were trying to compensate for what didn't make it on the SummerSlam card. I'm okay with that if it means we get championship matches on TV, though, especially if that includes a title change. My only problem is that Lucha House Party deserved to win, and I've been over Jeff Hardy for years, so I wasn't happy with the booking. Jeff needs to step aside and give his spot to a younger guy like Chad Gable. I'm glad Naomi got some exposure and a win, all while furthering the Sasha and Bayley storylines for Sunday. My biggest complaint about the overall show is that the matches were really short with mostly wonky finishes, and just like on Raw, Retribution dominated the first half of the show, only to disappear for the second half. As an episode of Smackdown, it was middle of the road. However, as a go-home show, I think it served its purpose and got me hyped up about the matches on Sunday. Well, that will do it for this week's Smackdown. Again, if you've managed to find me and you enjoy my content, please do all the normal YouTube stuff. Like, share, and subscribe. Spread the word and talk to me over on Twitter at PSUOptimus. I'll be back tomorrow with an action figure review of Dynamite and another one for SummerSlam on Monday, so definitely be sure to check back for all of that glorious content. Until then, I'll catch you later.